All right, welcome back to another part 8. So, so I'm going to be reading about the chapter 2, the brain. We learned about this in first beginning of the year. So, the second week actually. So, this is the brain by Mrs. Huber. All right. So, knowing brain biology, which is a 25-week and a 30-week and a 33-week term in adults. Like, this is what brains can look like in biology. Brain development can begin shortly after conception. Before birth, about 250,000 brain cells are formed each minute. Full-term babies have about 100 billion brain cells. Even with all of this, the brain is the least developed organ at birth. It is about 25% because of the size of an adult brain. Why might this be? How does a brain develop? Okay, so brain grows when brain chemicals are released with wave stimulation. What are some ways to stimulate the brain? It will grow in a predictable biological or sequence that is the same as all people. That is the same for all people as too. Age 13 to 10 months for area maturing. Activation, turning on and control of motor actions. 2 to 4 years old, which is like a toddler. What are some ways to stimulate the brain? Senses mature. The senses function near the adult level by the end of the stage. 6 to 8 years, which is like kindergarten or first grade or third grade or something like that. Beginning of logical thinking about actual experiences, unlike the previous stages that are genetically programmed. Logical thinking must be taught and practiced. 10 to 12 years, females, and 12 to 14 years, males. Beginning of generalized thinking beyond actual experiences, abstract reasoning. This ability allows other children and teens to understand higher mathematics and science. Neurons, the nerve cells, neuron and glial cells. This is the minutron, and this is the astrocyte, and microglia. That's what it looks like. An oligodendrocyte, oligodendrocyte. So glials or glials. Sorry about that. Supports the neurons act as glue. So it looks like neurons, the important stuff. Dendries means trees. They are short, bushy cables that allow each neuron to receive signals sent by other neurons, the impute function. The axons, they are the long, thick cables with terminal buttons, small knobs at the end of the axons that transmit all the signals from a neuron to other neurons, the output function. You see, this is what it looks like right here. This is the axon, and this is this area, and the dendrites, the axon terminals. Parietal lobe is right in the pink one. Occipit Occipital lobe, which is a purple one, and the cerebellum is the red spot. Spinal cord is the gold one, and temporal lobe is the green one, and the frontal lobe is the yellow one. Temporal lobe, hearing, smell, memory, and speech. So you can actually hear, smell, you can learn about your memory and talk properly like I am doing right now, actually, guys. Frontal lobe, memory, intelligence, behavior, emotions, motor function, and smell. They are required by good behavior and bad behavior, but not to have bad behavior because bad behavior does not affect unless you have like ADHD or something like that, but it still counts. But we can't act like a fool around this country, so we have to be nice people. So I understand people have medication stuff. We don't want this to be a terrible place. We don't want this to have a meltdown or anything like that. I don't want any kids to act like this. I don't want any of my kids, when I have kids in the future, I don't want them to act like this. Parietal lobe, pain and a touch, and sensations of hot and cold in speech. When you feel a pain of my tooth, for example, it really hurts a lot. And when you touch, and you're spreading COVID around here, so that's what it means to be. Occipital. Okay, so how do you define occipital? Occipital. 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 Sorry, guys, about that. Occipital. Right. Occipital lobe, vision and speech. So the vision is like the vision and speech they add together. Cerebellum, body movements and balance. When you're trying to make sure you're looking where you're going and not bumping into people in the road or anything like that. Not bumping people in the sidewalk. You have to watch where you're going and just keep your eyes on your balance. Focus on yourself. Do it all you want, but focus. Brainstem, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and reflexes in sleep. That's where you sleep from. When your brain is like so tired and you breathe, it really when you do this with your mask, um well I'm pretending that I'm doing it. Well, when you see that mask is like when you don't wear a mask is when it affects others for spreading COVID-19, that can get them sick. That does not work when you're doing that. So keep your mask on always whenever you're talking to people. Well, even though you're eating, but you can also do that too. But keep your mask on when you're not doing any of those stuff. Making and sorting connections. All right, so as you saw, each area of a brain is highly specialized. Before birth, cells must migrate to their special location. They then become a neuron that specializes in those functions of the brain depending on where they end up. In the beginning, neurons that need to make connections communicate will be near each other. Later, neurons can grow very long axons to reach distant neurons. This network is called wiring. Genes played a role in wiring. Wiring is for each person is as unique as their DNA. If you don't know what DNA stands for, just look it up. It'll tell you what it means. Wiring is needed for everything. Wiring changes with experiences. The sorting process. Once sections of the brain are wired, connections must be sorted by step-by-step process, aka learning. As to experiences, something signals are sent from one neuron from another. One neuron can contact with as many as 250,000 other neurons at the same time. Your brain is really cool. They communicate through as synapse with tiny gap between neurons. The process of communicating is called firing. That was for my child development class. The firing process. I heard that phrase before. So repeated and varied experiences trigger repeated firings in different parts of the brain. So this is here what it looks like. Repeating the same firing connection results in the connection being straightened. Okay, so it also forms even more synapses to enable more learning. Okay, so when you have autism or something like that, you can't help it, but you can repeat the same thing that you say again. You can't control it. You can't stop it. You can't do nothing about it. You can say the same thing over and over again, which is I don't mind when my friend does that too, which is Jake. A baby will begin with about 1,000 trillion connections, which allows for very rapid learning during the early years. So you have to learn about like nice process learning that you can teach your baby about or your kid about. Yeah. Repruning process. The brain likes to be efficient, but therefore it cannot keep really used or unused connections. Weeding out of these connections is called pruning. The healthy pruning allows the remaining connections to become strong, which increase the speed and efficiency efficiency for often used brain signals. Too much pruning means a person will find it most difficult to develop certain needed skills and abilities. When you're trying to sleep, or all these things above, is sleeping at waking up in the morning or sleeping at night or sleeping in the afternoon does not really as count as a schedule. Does not seem normal at all. So, excuse me again. All right, pruning is all about efficiency or efficiency. All right, so speaking of efficiency, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but myelin is another important player in the brain. Myelin, a fatty substance formed by glial cells, it wraps around longer axons and cushions the cell bodies of neurons. Without myelin, signals would travel 30 times slower. Plastic, plastic, plasticity. Right. The brain has the ability to change or adapt to the environment, which is called plasticity. For many years, they thought the brain could only adapt during the early years. However, children's brains are more adaptable than adults because children have more connections, they need more function. Rerouting connection among neurons is easier with more connections. The chemicals that aid in making connections are far more active in the early years. Connections are more flexible in the early years and become more stabilized as people age. The brain is amazing. What are some ways to protect it to allow the normal development? The similes of brain functions. A neuron is like, wiring is like, a synapse is like, a fine process is like, the pruning process is like, plasticity is like. Comment down below if you think any of those stuff. Just let me know. Okay, so we're gonna do about Jack the Ripper, which is made by John. Okay, so introduction. Jack the Ripper is the world's most mysterious and famous serial killer, having a canonical 5 murders of all of which being women who worked as prostitutes. He has recorded 5 canonical murders, or it has been official that he has been claimed he has killed as much as 11 women during his time. The public was learning to read more and do. The public being very upset about the many failed attempts of finding the murderer. The police commissioner and Home Secretary resigned. The players' victims: Mary Ann Nicholas, victim 1. Of August 31st of 1888 at 3:40 a.m., Mary Ann Nicholas' body was found in a Bucks Row in a Whitechapel. The body was found by a man named Charles Cross, who claims he was walking along Bucks Row when he noticed a bundle towards the western end. Another man named Robert Paula approached the body with Cross. Mary was found on her back with her throat severely slashed, and she was disemboweled It was determined that Sheely had been dead for about half an hour, meaning the killer could have been nearby the murder still. The players, victims, Annie Chapman. On September 8th, 1888, Annie Chapman's body was found at 29 Hanbury Street, near where the first murder happened. Her body was found by an elderly man by the name of John Davis, a resident of the 29 Hanbury Street building. When found, her throat was slit open. At this time, her wand was taken out. A man by the name of Dr. George Baxter Phillips, who was serving as a divisional police surgeon at the time, proposed the idea that the murder Jack the Ripper had to have an anatomical knowledge because of the manner Annie Chapman's womb has been removed recently. Elizabeth Stride. On September 27th, 1888, a note was sent to the police station nearby by the so-called murderer on a rampage stating that he made quick work of last victim, giving them no time to squeal, and giving himself now well-known name, Jack the Ripper. He also stated finding it funny how someone called him a doctor. His note wasn't released to the public until October 1st. Soon after, on September 30th, 1888, the body of Elizabeth Stride was found on a burner street by a man named Louis Daimschutz. 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 This time, only her throat was cut open, leaving to believe that his murder was interrupted when Daimschutz approached. More proof that it was interrupted was that there was no disembowelment like the other two murders. It was determined that she has been dead for 30 minutes when she was once discovered. Catherine Edelweiss, or Edelweiss. I don't know how to say the last name, but anyway. One shocking discovery is soon after Elizabeth's murder, 45 minutes after another murder occurred nearby, and a body was found in Madrid Square. Just west of the Stride murder, a woman named Catherine Edelweiss was the second victim on the same night. Her body was severely mutilated, and so was her face. Her uterus and left kidney was removed. One strange occurrence is that soon after the second murder, he went towards the first murder. So in doing that, he had to pass through the police. The case. No one was brought to the trial, but there were many suspects, but it was mostly narrowed down to three suspects: Montag, Johnson, Druitt. Reason that being that his cousins were doctors, so he would be able to have anatomical knowledge. The second suspect was a Russian doctor and a criminal, Michael Ostrog. He had been in an asylum for homicidal tendencies. It had been proven that he couldn't prove a strong alibi because he couldn't prove his whereabouts. His third suspect was a Polish and Jewish resident, Aaron Kosminski, who spent more time in an asylum. In 1889, after the last murder, the only thing to disprove is that he actually spent the rest of his time in the asylum until his death in 1919. He was known for his hate for women, mostly prostitutes. By police descriptions, his looks match a man that appeared in Montreux Square on the night of the double murder. My hypothesis. My hypothesis is that Jack the Ripper had to live somewhere nearby to be able to cause these murders so quickly, and because he knew where to go around the area. Like, he was there before, but if I had to say anything, I wouldn't be able to guess who is Jack the Ripper. Through a solution, is there anything that can be done about the murders to bring justice? I say no, because as it as it's been over 100 years since the murders happened, and man have tried to investigate, but all have failed. There's not much we can do to solve a mystery or bring justice. All right, expressing emotions by Mrs. Huber. All right, so this is what's beginning on second semester. So this is what babies feel right now. Babies feel confused, and babies feel mad. They feel happy, and they feel surprised. So let's just get over it. Long before babies express feelings, the emotion center of the brain becomes active. Feelings are complex. They are tied to thinking. They are tied to thinking, memory, and even language. The wiring of emotions takes 4 years to complete. By 2 months of age, infants begin constructing emotions. During the first 3 or 4 months, infants have two basic responses to their world: distress and excitement. By the end of the first year, infants can express love, fear, anxiety, anger, jealousy, joy, and sadness. That is familiar to Inside Out. Love, as parents and caregivers meets the infant's needs, the child begins to show love and affection towards those important adults called attachment. Babies also show attachment to other things such as pacifiers or stuffed toys. These objects are needed more when the baby gets upset or afraid, or when routines change. There is no need to worry about when the child is too attached to those objects. It is a security thing to them, and children will give them up to time. Just like in the movie Inside Out, fear is not presented at birth. The startle reflex that you see babies doing is just that, a reflex of fear. By 4 or 5 months, the infant may begin to show some wariness for adult strangers known as stranger fear. Fear is an emotion that occurs around 6 months. To experience true fear, the baby needs to know and understand that they can get hurt for a lot of things. Types of fear include fear of the unknown, strangers, or lockdowns, loud sounds, sirens or thunders, people coming in that they don't notice, or sudden movement. Fear learned for direct experiences, getting soap in their eyes, being in a doctor's office, seeing a dog. Babies don't really babies don't really show that expression. They just cry. I feel bad for them. Fear learned for adult influence. If an adult looks at something and acts fearful, that will cause children to also be fearful of that same thing. Like like they can be fearful for other things as well. Anxiety is a fear of a possible future event. This is anxiety of what it looks like. The first anxiety an infant has called separation anxiety. The fear that loved ones who leave them with other caregivers will not return. Separation anxiety begins around 8 months and peaks between 10 and 18 months. By 2 years old, separation anxiety fades away due to beginning to understand that parents must leave from time to time. They have to go places, or they can have babysitters. Babysitters can cost a lot of money, to be honest with you. Children remember that parents have returned in the past and will likely do it again. 2-year-olds being more independent than infants, because babies are more crying, but 2-year-olds can be calm too. 2-year-olds can express their needs better. They can express how they feel. They can talk. They can talk it out. They can talk a little bit, not a whole bunch, but they can just do gaga sounds. I don't mind hearing it. Anger. Anger develops by 8 to 10 months of age. See this baby right here? Infants often show angry when they are being held, diapered, or dressed. In a confined space, crib or high chair, cannot reach a toy or want a toy that has been taken away. Their needs are not being met. Like their needs are not completely being met. That can't be right what the baby even wants. Just as the startle reflex precedes the emotion of fear, infant rages precedes terror and anger. Infant rage occurs when babies are distressed. When they feel distressed, they may swing their arms and leg, turn red, and cry loudly. This is not anger because it is an instinctive response with no thought. When they cannot reach something, they just cry loudly. They mostly just get angry when they're being held or diapered or dressed. Anger is a feeling caused by frustration that is directed or focused towards a certain person or object. Infants express anger in physical ways due to their lack of language skills, which can lead to more anger. Why study Earth-based science? Again, it was made for Chapman. All right, so why do we study Earth? Why do we study Earth science? Why? Most of our daily actives, most of our daily activities are directly related to the Earth and its processes. Cell phones, glass, silicon dioxide, aluminum, aluminium oxide, indium tin oxide, metals, gold, silver, aluminum, platinum, or tungsten, or copper, or lithium, or carbon oxide. All of these come from the earth. Eating, showering, driving cars, they move in different directions. That's what I learned about science so far. Current controversial events: global climate change, abortion, vaccines, animal rights, evolution, capital punishment, marriage equality, immigration, opioid, addiction, transgender rights. All these topics involve science. If you don't understand science, you can't make a truly informed decisions about things. It is important to note that science does not care about how you feel. Climate change. There are a lot of things happening on in our planet. You guys will soon join the group of people voting about laws and regulations. But if we don't understand our planet and how it works or where it fits in this scheme of space, can you inequality? Can you add it quadtilly? Quadil? Can you add it quadtilly? Do that? Add it quadtilly? Do that? Or can you adequately do that? Sorry. But what about the news? Journalists always report correct. They can also report contact or accurately information rate. Antarctic mantle plume supervolcano threatens ice collapse, which is a supervolcano that is presented in this story right here. The real story: NASA started to research what if in regards into a mantle plume under western part of Antarctica. They eventually created and released a model showing what would happen in the Arctic ice if the mantle plume existed. Other headline reports: Diana was still alive hours before she died. World Bank said poor needed more money. Forecasters call for weather on Monday. They're, hesi- they're hesitant to predict snowstorm here. It was sometimes this weekend we will know the sure whether or not we can face to face. Universe shouldn't exist. CRN physicists conclude Cosmos. What actually happened? Physi- physicists were about to find the mass of an antiproton, and it is incredibly precise and seems to be the opposite of the proton. What does this all mean for science and space? I mean, who knows? World's first head transplant volunteer could experience something. What actually happened? Sergio Canavero, who is a doctor, has claimed that head transplants will be possible because he has done it on cadavers, so not volunteers. Breviarians scientifically prove that they can live without food or water. Not true. What actually happened? The story, Planet X is heading straight for Earth. The truth, Nibiru, a non-existent planet. Nibiru provide NASA has evidence for Planet X pulling solar system of balance. Yeah, that's what it means by it. It is a sign. Christian says it is a sign of apocalypse, which is basically the shock claim of how the Earth's space can be automatically changed for the news. Media bias. All these news come playing around here. Original fact reporting. Fact. Complex analysis. Opinion for permission. Selective or incomplete story. Unfair permissions. Propagendal. Commons. Misleading info. Contains inaccurate federated info. It also can be the circle and ellipse represent rage at. Stories within a source often fall not true for all sources though. Green rectangle, news, yellow rectangle, fair interpretations of a news. Orange rectangle, unfair interpretations of a news. Red rectangle, nonsense damaging to a public discourage, which is either liberal or conservative. This is all what it meant to be. How do we respond? We learn science. If half of the studies we reread are wrong, we have to learn how the process of science works, how to read and understand at least the basics of the lab report, the media bias, and how that many skew the information that you are reading. What is the nature of science? Step one: understand what science is. I learned that for third grade. All right, so we're gonna learn about the Growing West by Kyla and Sandy. Okay, so the Growing West is: how did the Native Americans show their frustration with the U.S. government for taking their homelands and moving them? Some Native Americans fought back, but they were always outnumbered, and others signed treaties to stay in their area. Who is Chief Joseph? He was the leader of the Wallowa band of the Nez Perce tribe. This was the Native American tribe of the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. He led his people on a flight across the Rocky Mountains of Montana. Joseph later then surrendered to the federal troops near the Canadian border of Montana, saying, "Hear me, my chiefs. I am tired, my heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. It does not require many words to speak the truth. Let me be a free man, free to travel, free to stop, free to work." Joseph died of what his doctor called a broken heart. Who is Geronimo? Geronimo. Why was he important? Geronimo was an Apache leader. It was great warrior. He's important because he was known for his fearlessness against the Americans that stripped him for his rights, invaded his homeland. Who was Sitting Bull? Why was he important? Sitting Bull was 19th century Native American. He's important because he he defended his native land. One example would be the battle in the Little Bighorn, Sand Creek Massacre. The peace chef Black Kettle wanted peace between the white man. The white man only agreed to talk about peace and they were surrendered, which Black Kettle and 20 other chiefs agreed to. They sent two Native Americans to Sand Creek under the protection of a flag. Black Kettle hung up to the American flag with the white flag being in peace. John Shivington did not believe the Native American that they want peace and marched through the night to kill all the Indians. And Sand Creek was mostly made up for women, children, and elderlies. In Colorado, John Shivington was seen to be as a hero. Also, here's signed so he wouldn't be punished. I stand by Sand Creek, John Shivington. This is all the info about these guys. Battle of Little Bighorn. When June 25th, 1876. What happened at a United States general named George Custer went to invade a native tribe with an estimate of 300 to 600 soldiers. But the soldiers were outnumbered by the Native Americans. The Native Americans were led about Sitting Bull won the battle, killing all 300 and 600 soldiers, and this was important because it was a win for natives. This all started because of George Custer found gold in the Black Hills. Alright, so Wounded Knee Massacre. The massacre happened December 29th of 1890 when Native Americans heard of the Sitting Bull's death and traveled up the Wounded Knee Creek to perform the ghost dance, the right of the white people, and to restore their land in fear of attack. And James Forsyth and other men asked the Indians to surrender their weapons, with the misunderstanding and a fire shot lead to the death of 150 to 300 Indians. All right, so this is the site. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the last part. Well, not the last part, but part 9. Doing the last part for today. See you guys soon.